Hello, hello, Ederson Oliveira here. This is the November edition of the TADUG User Group Meeting, DNN Toronto area DNN User Group. And today is November the 7th. We have a good showing of people here. I'm gonna acknowledge in a little bit everybody, but let's get this rolling here. Oops. Okay, so as usual, we're gonna go through some acknowledgements, announcements, group time, the presentation. Oh, actually that's a very good point. The main presenter is not around yet, which may screw things up completely. But to be quite honest, I've checked with him a few times, and it was getting to a point that he was saying, yeah, I know it's Wednesday, I know it's late for me, and I know. So let's see, he has about 5 minutes to show up, otherwise we have to call the quits today, you know. Yeah, and if he's sleeping, because I mean he is not very close by. In any case, let's get going. Let's see how this goes. So group time presentation, building complex systems with DNN Sharp modules, and it should be presented by Bogdan Litescu, who's again not around yet. And then we have our meeting wrap up. So while we wait, I guess, for him to show up, let's go through some acknowledgements here. Just want to say thank you for DNN for Less, more specifically to, oh man, I forgot his name now. Jesse there at DNN for Less, is DNN Solutions as well, and Hoffling Software, our friend Andrew Hoffling. Andrew should be doing a presentation in the next few meetups. Should be around presenting. Let me review here, see if, yeah, okay, so, oh, we have the man of the night around, good. Okay, so those were the acknowledgements. Just a quick announcements. I try to focus on whatever is going on in terms of DNN releases. So there is a release candidate planned for November 26th, DNN 9.3.0. If you want to get more details about that, I think that's, let me see if I can. Yeah, you can definitely check it out at oops, let me see if I can move things around here. Okay, so there is the roadmap page, so you can definitely check it out there. UI for Google Analytics should be back by that release. What else we have for this release that I was gonna mention? No, nothing else. Actually, yeah, there are a few more things, but I thought I would mention the Google Analytics that should be back available again in the DNN admin interface. Now, on that same note, on the 26th, there will be a release candidate. So one of our friends here that is present right now, but he's driving, he cannot talk too much. Well, I think that he's not even around anymore. But I saw a very good blog post by David Poindexter. And I'm gonna, again, try to share if I'm able to manage my screens here. So this blog post was about, because there's always the call to action of, let's test the release candidate, or let's test the next release. Let's test, but give it a try, you know? But what exactly should we do when we have a new release in place or a release candidate? What should we test? How should we test? How should we go about that? And David Poindexter put together a step-by-step, a simple 10-step testing process for release candidates. And he goes through what he thinks, and I think that's very well put together, should be the steps that you take to test properly and report whatever you found properly back to the community, so that can be fixed, that can be addressed. And that's the whole point of having a release candidate, is to be able to give time for people to download it, to do some initial testing, to go through some common scenarios that you'd go through when you were using DNN, and he goes through the recommended scenarios. Again, very well put together, very good. It was actually a good reference point for myself as well when I'm testing a new release candidate. So again, Dave, thank you very much. If you are there, great. If you're not, you're maybe catching this on recording. So again, I wanted to bring this up to you guys as a resource. I'm gonna do a plug here to a buddy of mine. His name is, let me get his last name correct here. Oh, so many screens, I have to close some stuff here. 1 second. Okay, his name is Ben Wilhelm. Ben is a web developer instructor based in Chicago, and he put together a debugging book, not troubleshooting. Sorry, I wanted to use that word, but it's not troubleshooting. It's debugging. So it's debugging for a new developer, but I think that this is also interesting for a long-time developer. I mean, I found a lot of interesting things the way that he put things together in this debugging software applications in JavaScript. Examples are written in JavaScript. However, you can apply the main concepts to whatever language you might be debugging with, you might be using. So again, a very interesting resource. You can go to this URL, debuggingjs.com, and you can download a few simple chapters that should be worth, it should be enough to check if it's worth or not getting the book. Actually, the book is coming soon, but the simple chapters are already available, and I went through them. So again, I highly recommend that for any coder out there, any developer out there, whether you are developing, using JavaScript, using, whatever language. And in this case, he focused more on JavaScript. So again, very good resource. That's your plug, Ben. What else we have here? Let me go back to the presentation. Okay, so just want to give a shout out to the new members. How do I check the new members? I go to the Meetup page, and if I'm able to manage, again, my screen's having a hard time here. So I'm just gonna browse through quite a few new faces here. I don't know, Spectral Cats. I don't know if that's your name. If it's your name, that's a pretty cool name. I don't think it is, but hey, from New York, Ontario, or from North York, Ontario. Wells, Warren Hales from Toronto as well. And then we have Lens Latin from the Netherlands. Yeah, I know you, hence good to have you around as well. Natalie Macadam from Toronto too, from a local here. Mark, I think that you are in the call, Mark. Let me see if Mark is still. Yes, Mark, how are you, Mark?
Yeah, good, Anderson, thank you.
Thank you for joining the group, okay?
Absolutely.
Fazil Ansar from North York, Ontario as well, very close by. Roberto, this is the Italian guy. Where is your last name here, Roberto? Let me see if I can find. Roberto Caporale. Good to see you in the group too. And last but not least, Svein Breck from, I think it's from Norway. I have a look at that. So just going through quickly here, the ones online right now, we have Bogdan, the main presenter. We talk in a bit. Bogdan, good to see you here. I was getting a bit worried a second ago. Clint Patterson, good to see you, Clint. Daniel Valadas, our Montreal. How many languages do you speak, Daniel? I mean, is that French, English, Portuguese? What else?
Yeah, I speak English, French, and Portuguese. And I understand like Spanish because it's very similar to Portuguese. I'm not very proficient.
Awesome. So Mark Bowsin. Mark, very good to have you around too. Mark Hall, we just spoke a little bit. Paul Scarlett. Paul, how are you doing? Oh, good, Paul. I think that you might be muted, Paul. I think it's still.
Yes, I am. I'm muted.
Okay.
Showing the age, you know. Got to look at the right little button on the screen, not the green one that says my camera's on.
Good. It's good to see you, Paul. And then we have Steve Karpik. Very, very good to have you, Steve.
Good evening.
Good evening. What have you been doing with DNN lately?
Not a lot. I've been busy with other types of stuff.
Don't tell me that. I mean, everybody that comes here needs to be busy with DNN. I'm joking.
That's coming.
Okay, good to see you here. Very good. Let me see, guys. If anyone is talking on the chat, and if there's something that needs to be brought over, by all means, shout out, as I cannot check the chat at the same time that I do my rambling.
Yeah, I kind of missed it, but for the 9.3 release, we should also see back UI for managing page icons and the host email.
Awesome.
2 little small things that should be added.
Got it. Okay. Great. Okay, so let me go back there. So those were the new members and existing members. Just a quick brush through all of them. And now let's talk a little bit about the main presenter, Bogdan Litescu. I can see already his face around here. Yes, I can see him. Okay. So let me first introduce you. So let me try to do a proper introduction if I can find my way around here. Okay, so Bogdan Litescu is your typical geek with the ultimate goal to build and own successful software products. Accidentally, he made it, and DNN Sharp has been the top module provider for DNN for the last few years. For some reason, he can't understand people like him, so they join his crazy idea of a team where everyone is encouraged to take ownership and deliver one's full potential. He keeps a journal that he hopes will be worth a lot of money once he's famous and very, very, very rich. I just added that, by the way. His life philosophy includes trying everything twice, connect the dots, and ice cream. I wonder which flavor of ice cream, but you can say that in a second. I just want to finalize by saying that first time that I had some interaction with Bogdan was back in 2011, and I was asking questions about Search Boost, which is still one of their modules, one of DNN Sharp module. And back then, the company was not called DNN Sharp. It was called Avatar Software. Is that correct, Bogdan?
Yes, the company is still called Avatar Software, so DNN Sharp is a brand name.
A brand, yeah, I get it. Very good. So that's the presenter, guys. That's about it. Welcome, Bogdan. How are you?
I am a bit sleepy, I have to admit. It's almost 2 a.m. here.
Oh my goodness. Again, thank you very much for doing this, okay, Bogdan? But, I've warned you. I said, hey, if you want to take this, I mean, it will be late for you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And yes, I made this decision myself, so I can't blame you.
So which ice cream?
Which ice cream? Oh, maybe vanilla ice cream.
Too bland for you. There needs to be a very exotic flavor for you there. But let me do one thing. Let me give you presenters access, and then you can show what you need to show. Okay, make presenter, send request, and you should have it and most likely you'll be prompted to download a plugin.
Yes.
Give it a try. So back then, back 2011, I would assume that it was just yourself back then?
In 2011, I think, yes, myself and maybe a few people I worked with on specific projects. But yes, it was pretty much me, myself, and the laptop coding all night. Good times.
Good times, good times. Now, how many now?
15 people in my team now.
Okay, it's a very good size, very good size. Okay, so we cannot see your screen yet. Oh, actually we can. We can see your screen, but we see ourselves. Okay, just so you know. So let me ask you this. Building complex solutions with DNN Sharp. What are you going to be talking about? I mean, just give us a bit of an overview and get going with your presentation.
Yes. So I see a lot of serious faces here. And I think it's early for you. Especially Clint, he's very serious.
Well, it's earlier as compared to where you are, definitely.
Yes.
You know, Clint is the face in the front, not on the wall.
Yes. So yeah, when Anderson contacted me to talk on this user group, I gave him a few topics, and this one he was most interested in: how to build complex application with our modules. And I thought maybe I would show some internal tools that we built, which got quite complex in time. It's an auto build process. So basically, we built our own build machine that automates all the flow. And we started this project, I think 4 years ago, and it evolved. So it works. So all the builds are built by this machine and then are published automatically to our website. And they are also pushed to a marketing portal from where we send a newsletter. And it runs unit tests and stuff like this. So I will just go into this portal. So this basically is our auto build portal. And here it's not very sexy because we use this internally mostly, but I will show you all the bits of NPCs. So the first part here at the top, it's an action form. And this one we use to make builds manually from other branches. So not from the main branch. This is sometimes when we start a new feature, we start with a new branch, with a new code branch, and then we create builds from here. And here we have an action grid that has all our products, all our modules. And from here we can build them manually. Sometimes we do this, we build them manually. But mostly all the work is done from this API endpoint. And basically this grid, when I build, it also calls this method. Basically it does a server request and an HTTP request to this API endpoint. So I'm not sure how everyone is familiar, if everyone is familiar with our modules, but basically so far I showed you, I went through 3 modules. So this is the form builder, this is the grid module, the data grid module, and this is the API builder module. What they all have in common is that at some point they execute some actions, we call them actions. which the form would execute on submit, the grid would execute when you click the buttons on each row, and the API endpoint executes when the API is called, is invoked. So here is basically a list of actions that you can configure, so you can order them in a way that makes sense for the application. And there are tons of actions that do lots of stuff, from running SQL query to making server requests to APIs, to integrating with third-party services like MailChimp, Salesforce, and stuff, other services like this.
So Bogdan, let me ask you a question. There's nothing here that is custom built to what you need there. This is the modules as you see them in the DNN store, correct?
Yes, exactly. But we have a few pieces that are custom, so I will show them to you as we get there. We have some special build actions. So I will go into the edits and I will show you the actions. So the first one is just setting a debug variable based on which sometimes we send the debug logs. This we use when we make changes. Then there's another action that sets the current branch. So develop is our main branch. That's where we build everything from. And basically here it's also demonstrated how one can use conditions to trigger a special action. So for example, this condition is basically C# code that tells if branch name is empty, then this will execute and it will set this variable to this value. Then the next action is actually this one we redid after this initial implementation. So now it's called Parse Json, something like that. But first, initially we built it especially for parsing the GitHub payload. So basically, I don't know if you're familiar. Let me go. Basically, in GitHub, you can set some webhooks, I think. Yes. You can set some webhooks where GitHub can send a payload whenever, for example, a pull request is merged. I think that's our trigger. So basically the payload is just a JSON telling everything that changed, the paths that changed, the files that changed. So we use this payload to trigger building the appropriate product, because we have a single repository for all our products. And then we have some regex actions that extract the title and number of the pull request. This is just a debug email. This is based on the variable that I showed you earlier, which was set to false. And then this one basically ignores. So we have a user is called automated build, which takes care of incrementing some version file and does a commit back, and we want to ignore those. So this action, which is also custom build, basically looks at the payload and ignores the commits that were pushed by the auto build process. Okay, and then we have a database with all the products, and this action loads the data from the database. Okay. Okay. And then the next action, this one is also custom built. So basically this custom build action are just some C# classes that derive from that implement an interface, which we do this logic directly from code.
So let me ask you this: Can users of your modules also extend those and do something similar to what you have done there, or they would need the code base?
Yes, it's documented, so anyone can implement the interface, and then the DLL must go into the bin, and a config file must go into a special folder, and it's all in the documentation. And we do this quite often when we implement projects. Sometimes we arrive at some custom functionality. We don't want to change the product. It doesn't make sense to add it as a feature, and it doesn't make sense to add it as a new product. And then we just write a custom action for that specific need.
Okay, so let me just go one level up there. So you said custom action. So this is, again, this is the action form module, is it?
This one is the API, but basically it's the same. It's a flow of actions. But this one is the API because we have many places, like I show you the form at the top and then the grid. They all call the same API. So we only implement it here once, and it can be called from many places. If you think it makes sense, I can also show you some of the code for these actions.
Well, I'll let you go through what you had planned there. I mean, if you feel like, that's fine with me.
Okay, maybe I will finish going through this flow, and then I will show you maybe a bit of code, and then maybe I will take some questions and go into other specifics. Okay, and I think so like I told you, this is an API, and sometimes it's called with some parameters, and based on those parameters, you might load different data. Here is, I think this one is for our, let me see. Yes, so yeah, so this one sets up some multiple variables. So this basically it's just setting all these variables. So project project name, branch. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, this is the user that you earlier. So this will be the user that will pull the data. So this would be the next action. So this basically it's again a custom built action, but it's just executing a pull request. It's just executing a pull from GitHub. And then after all the files are brought to the server, this one would create some common files. Like we have common static files and common config files that are built once, but go in all the program. So here, this I think would be the cleanup, and then it just copies them, the artifacts from a different folder. Yeah, so this basically is this action. This action is already in the product, I believe, which which runs command, and then a NuGet restore to get the dependency. And finally, you think it's finally because it's only one, but what this action does, it iterates over all the products that are the payload that GitHub's and executes another list of actions. So yeah, so maybe I will just zoom in here where I need to provide more details. So a debug email, and then here is just a status update. Another internal thing. This one I see it's not documented. This one gets the version. This one increments the version of the common files of the common DLS. So we have two common DLS, and I think I see this this increments them for all of them. I think there are three, in fact. This one builds the project using MS Build. And then this one commits back with the version incremented. We also keep the version in a text file. So basically this one goes back as a commit in the GitHub repository. So these actions only execute for the common file. So what this condition here says is that if the affected project is common, one of these common project, then will this action execute, which builds the common files. Okay, and then after these common files have been built, it loads these artifacts, which are basically files, paths to files. And then I see we minify the JS files. We run front-end tests, automated unit tests. Then we build the common versions, the common actions version. And then here we, at some point, some products have 2 DLLs, some products have 1 DLL, so that's why there are 2 here. And then increments the version, update the version.
So Bogdan, let me ask a question.
Sure.
Sure, that's fine.
What do you have to do on top of all this automation? I mean, is there any manual steps that still need to go on top of all of that?
No, no. So this basically takes care of everything. And let me get to the final steps. So basically the final steps, it zips the DNN package, and then it uploads it on Amazon S3. And then it sends it to a marketing portal. I'll show you its next tab. And then it sends an email. So let me show you the marketing portal would look like this. So here we have all pull requests. And here is where our marketing guy goes in, edits them, and produces, I don't know if you saw our newsletter. So this one is generated automatically from the pull requests, which are edited, of course. And also, so basically, all this code that I show you take care of building the project with the correct versions and the correct dependencies, and then it pushes them to DNN Sharp website. So it goes into the downloads database, and it also comes as an email to us. So we get, let me see, for example, we get this kind of emails. Like this is from AutoBuild, the Excel add-on was built. We have the link to download. And then we have a changelog here. Directly. But this one also goes into the database, and let me see if I can if I can show you the messages that we show. Sorry, did you say something?
No, I think that it's just some interference. That's okay.
Okay. So basically, if I go to this page and let's say I change a version, I will get this message that this is built. This is not published yet. So basically, all the builds go into the database, but we manually publish them after the tests have been done. Somebody in our QA team gave green light to put it on the website.
Got it. And it needs to be published on the DNN store as well, correct?
Yeah, DNN store doesn't have an API, so yes. We rarely upload, only when we make major releases, we upload new builds on DNN store.
Okay.
Because usually we make maybe 30 builds in a week. That would be insane to upload them manually to the DNN store.
I get it. Okay, so let me ask you this: from all that you've shown there, you said that there are some custom pieces there that were built for, and I guess at the Git integration that it was custom built to you guys, isn't it? From your team.
Yeah.
What would be the alternative of doing all of that the way you have done, Bogdan?
The alternative, there are some tools. I believe a few years ago we used Jenkins for a while, but it was very limiting, and we already did this kind of workflows very nice, and we thought, let's eat our own dog food, And it just evolved over time as we change our process. We change this also. Now it's quite stable. I don't think we changed it maybe in over a year.
Yeah, that was my next question. I mean, how stable is that? So you changed it very little, correct?
Yeah, so now it just works. We haven't touched it for a while.
Yeah. Have you used that kind of customization for clients as well? I mean, were there clients that ever needed something like as sophisticated or as complex as something like that you put together?
I think that's the beauty with our modules, because at some point, if it gets complicated, there is a way to do it. It's not you are not limited. And sometimes in some of our clients, we get to this point where it gets complicated, and then we can do it. We can do it either with the actions, existing actions, or we write new actions. Let me see if I can find some code. But I have to tell you, I haven't touched the code in a while. I think these are in a different repository, actually. Never mind, I will just show you some actions, because it doesn't have to be exactly those actions. So you can see how action looks like. Let me see if I can find a simpler one. I don't want to go over a very complicated. Let's see the Excel one. Yeah. So basically, an action looks like this. It implements an interface that comes from DNN Sharp common namespace. And then they have some parameters. And at the same time, let me show you the config file. So there will be a config file. That looks like this, that basically defines the parameters. And the UI is automated. So as the action developer, you only have to write this config file. For each parameter, you would have to give it a type. And then based on this, the fields, so all these action fields, like this one, are generated automatically from the config file. So you don't have to write any UI code. Yeah, so this action would have all these parameters. And each parameter has a type. Some are dropdowns, and if they are dropdowns, they either have a data source or they have a list of entries defined here in the config files. And then, let me get back to the code. And then in the action, you can decorate with this attribute, the properties, and our modules will automatically inject the saved parameters into these variables. So it's all quite automated. You just write this interface, you write the config files, you put this, and you get all the settings that all the settings that are in this here in the admin interface, you get in the class without having to do anything. And then there's an execute method where is the specific code. Yeah, like this one, this action generates Excel from SQL code. So basically, it creates a database query, and then each row in the database is inserted into the Excel file.
So Bogdan, do you have clients that go to this level of let's call it this level of requirements with you guys?
Yes, we have clients that write these actions by themselves.
By themselves?
Yes. This is documented, and a lot of people use this because when you have some custom logic, and then you have to build forms, and then you have the common feature like send emails and stuff like that. But then you have a custom piece, and instead of writing it all custom, you can only write that part custom and save a huge amount of time.
Got it. But I would assume that there is you said it's documented, and I get it, but there is a bit of a learning curve. So again, people are willing to go through that learning curve because of the savings of time that they're gonna have on other areas, correct?
Yes, I mean, if that person already knows the product, so let's say already knows action form, already knows C#, the learning curve is not steep at all. I mean, it's a matter of a few hours until you get something going. And I think, let me see if I can find the documentation quickly. There's also a sample in the documentation it's a bit simpler. Actions, extensibility. Yeah. So here is like a step-by-step guide how to create a custom action. And there should also, here are all the parameters, the parameter types that I show you in the config file. And at some point, there should be, yeah, so there's also a download link at the bottom, and there's a project here that has a simpler action.
Bogdan, just to keep on the back of your mind, I have a question here from Mark, and he was saying, I wonder if Bogdan could show an example of how a customer has built something rather integrated with your modules. I mean, are you able to, again, either show or at least talk through of things that you have seen people, as you mentioned, because you mentioned that people get very creative with your suite of modules. So anything comes to mind?
Something that integrated with this module. I'm not sure I understand the question.
The question, I guess that if I can reword a little bit, is there anything that you think is complex that you have seen an implementation coming from one of your clients?
Yeah, I saw some very complex things. You know, the guy from Duotix, Dennis and Dieter. I think maybe last year they showed me a very complex project management system they built with our suite of modules.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Hans, the DNN work site, is entirely built with our modules.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And again, Mark just added here, for instance, someone who has built an information flow between action form in the database and reports through action grid. Again, he just gave an example of, you know, something that could potentially come to mind, you know.
There also was that project with the Biophysics Society. I think Saran mentioned on the DNN Connect group. I don't know if it was a few months ago, I think. So basically that was a very complex project where they have a submission flow of papers and then approval stages, and it's I think it's the most complex project that I know of. Yeah. I think Mark, if you want, we can schedule a call, and I can have one of my guys show you, the guy that worked on that project, show you more details, internals about how it was built. So I think it's quite interesting that GitHub is also launched, I think, a few weeks ago, something like this called, I think, workflows or actions, something like this. I don't, yeah. How was it called? GitHub Actions. I haven't worked with it, but oh, it's a public beta now. Okay.
Okay, so is there anything else, Bogdan, that you'd like to share at this point?
I think it's enough for today. I hope I was clear enough.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. So any question from the group? Anything that you like to bring to Mark? If you, instead of me, I guess that reading your questions, you can jump in the call and you can ask for by yourself. No.
Yes, the purpose of this demo, Mark, was that I would show more complex application, because normally I think maybe 80–90% of the time you don't have to go into writing custom actions, and we don't go into writing custom actions for our clients.
Right. I would add that your clients have made a lot of custom actions of their own using your products. And I would just like to add that the person doesn't need to know a bunch of code like we've seen tonight so far in order to do something pretty fancy with your modules. I want to give you a shout out. The modules are really awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess that's the point, was that building complex systems. So again, it cannot get much more complex than what Bogdan showed us. But just keep in mind that they were really stretching the use of their tool sets very much on examples that he has given, and you can do a lot before you have to touch any sort of coding with their module set. Okay, so Bogdan, short and sweet, let's put it this way. I have to thank you very much for the time, and again, I appreciate the fact that you are coming late at night to talk to us. I'm quite sure, I don't know if you're gonna start the day earlier or finish late again, but thank you very much for...
I'm not sure yet.
What is that?
I'm not sure yet. I will decide in the morning.
Okay.
After I hit snooze a couple of times.
Got it. Okay, so that's about it. Again, thank you very much, Bogdan. I will regain control here of the presentation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay, let me share my screen. Just make sure, yep. And I guess, let me see here. Questions have been asked, if there were some. And I just wanted to, I guess that before I wrap things up, I don't want to hold you guys longer than what you have to. So the next one will be either on the 5th or the 6th of December. I still have to check that, but it will be done by Mike Smeltzer. He is under the weather today, so he could not join us today, but he will be talking about the DNN Building Blocks. High-level walkthrough of what building blocks are available to solution designers and developers when building solutions on the DNN platform. This meetup will touch upon the common extensions such as modules and themes, but also jump into more unknown areas such as analytic providers, system events, connectors, and more. Guys, thank you very much for being here. We are wrapping this up, and I'll see you guys again in a month. Okay? Have a great one, and cheers. Oh, let me go to the final one here. That's it. Have a good one. Thanks very much for being here. Have a great November, and I'll talk to you guys at the beginning of December. Thank you. Bye.